On Fire at Work: How Great Companies Ignite Passion in Their People Without Burning Them Out. The author is Eric Chester. I'm your narrator, Rich Germain. Chapter 1: Steak Knives, the Old School, and the New Deal. We're adding a little something to this month's sales contest. As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. In the 1992 film Glengarry Glen Ross, Blake, famously portrayed by Alec Baldwin, issues this decree, exposing an artful display of insult and injury in the guise of a motivational speech to the troops. Called in on a mission of mercy for a beleaguered office of real estate salesman, Blake unleashes a 5-minute smackdown on the hapless bunch, something reminiscent of the abuse a battle-hardened drill sergeant might give boot camp recruits on their first day. There's so much contempt spewing from Blake's lips that it's easy to lose count of how many times he offends his targets with every slur under the sun. The salesmen can hardly believe their ears. At first, they all think it's all a joke, until Blake tells them they are all fired. That's followed by the happy news that they've got 1 week to turn things around if they want to keep their jobs. "Oh, have I gotten your attention now?" he asks, sardonically. It's not a joke, but it is amusing to watch, so long as you're not on the receiving end. No one, not the characters and certainly not the viewing audience, believes that Blake's pep talk will have any positive effect on employee morale. Indeed, it's not meant to. It's really a termination notice, masquerading as a rally cry. The gist is that at least half of the office will lose their jobs. The sales contest exists simply to decide who's going to get the heave-ho. And if you're not in favor of the way you're being treated, hit the road. The film portrays a classic old-school environment fueled by fear of being thrown into the dark abyss of unemployment at a moment's notice. Moreover, in this Machiavellian world, your boss isn't your ally, but rather your enemy. And he can push the button to the trap door you're standing on and ruin your life at any moment. In this kind of culture, there are no winners. There are only survivors, and those survivors are rewarded with steak knives. In this classic scene, steak knives are an insult, a booby prize no one really wants, a symbol of mediocrity. But getting them at least means you can keep your job. So there's some small redeeming value to them, I suppose. You get to keep your job, that is, until the next time Blake arrives on the scene. What'll happen then is anybody's guess. It's hard to believe that workplaces like the one depicted in Glengarry Glen Ross could still exist in 2015 and beyond, but some do. And while they're more plentiful than you might imagine, this book is not about terrible workplace cultures and despicable bosses. In my research for this and other books, I've come across a vast number of organizations that, while nothing like the one described above, still operate under a winner-take-all ethos. Top performers get the Eldorado, struggling performers are terminated, and the vast majority sandwiched between those extremes are held at bay and ignored. This majority tends to feel as if they're in some kind of steak knives purgatory, and, no big surprise, their performance usually reflects the limbo in which they live. Their goal is to escape the axe, so they keep their heads down and fly beneath the radar. For them, employment heaven is a dream far off into the future when they find a better job at a better company, a staff made up of steak knives. That's some employee pool. There's no need to belabor the point that your success and the success of your business is tied directly to 1, the quality of the people you attract to your organization, 2, your proficiency in getting those people to consistently perform up to and even beyond their potential, and 3, your ability to keep them on your payroll for as long as possible. And all of that hinges on one thing: your culture. Now let's look at corporate culture old school style. In the late 70s and early 80s, I worked my way through college as a grunt gopher in a 50,000 square foot freight salvage warehouse filled to the rafters with everything from 55-gallon drums of rubber cement to cornflakes to submarine batteries. This odd business was owned and managed by a tough-as-nails man who came of age during the Great Depression and whose perception of life was formed during that period as a homeless teenager and later as a soldier in World War II. That iron-fisted boss was also my father. Dad's rugged path to owning his own business left him with zero sympathy for people who encountered unpleasant working conditions. The way he saw it, a job, any job, was a good thing. You work to live and you live to work. And when the man who signed your check told you to jump, the only acceptable response was, "How high, sir?" Dad didn't understand the word quit and would never allow his son to utter it in any context, especially not when it came to work. You cannot fathom some of the tasks he charged me with during my tenure as his apprentice. My father was, in a term, old school. We'll be referring to the old school a lot throughout this book as a catch-all phrase that defines those workplace cultures that operate from a command and control, top-down, my way or the highway mindset. However, don't think that you have to visit the Smithsonian to see an old-school culture on display. The old-school outlook isn't reserved for a particular age group or demographic. It's not a peculiar tenet of certain industries or professions. You can find it alive and well in the most progressive, arcade game-filled, relaxation lounge-laden tech startup in Seattle. Likewise, you can find the exact opposite in the most mundane, cubicle-regimented accounting firm in Birmingham. This way of thinking transcends the generations and is still very much in play at companies across the globe. In fact, there's a good chance that your own experience includes working in an old-school culture or reporting to one or more bosses who embodied old-school ideals. What they demanded of you as an employee and what you wanted from them as an employer were directly at odds. The credo woven into that culture was one best summarized by Blake in Glengarry Glen Ross. If you don't like it, leave. Much of the old-school mentality is based on a perception that labor and management are at constant odds. Workers aren't motivated. They're coerced and prodded. Workers aren't passionate. They're lazy and insolent. Fear keeps workers in line, not a shared commitment to the success of the company. This friction between boss and employee assumes the interests of both groups are in direct opposition, so each must constantly battle the other to get what they want, all the while working together to survive, the employee's perspective, and keep the company alive, the employer's perspective. If all of this sounds slightly melodramatic, it's because I want to make the basic point that the old school feels outdated today. But that doesn't mean it's extinct. Champions of the old school can point proudly to highly successful corporations and industries that have been pragmatically built in accordance with this very approach. If it worked then, shouldn't it work now? The old school deal. Today's old school employers don't place much credence in buzzword-sounding mumbo-jumbo like employee engagement and workplace culture. For the most part, they're fair-minded, practical people who pay wages in exchange for labor. So if you want one of their paychecks, damn it, just do what's asked of you and keep your mouth shut. That's the deal as they see it. What's inherent in the old school mindset is the assumption that the exchange of money for time and effort is sufficient. In other words, the financial deal that exists between an employer and an employee, compensation for work performed, is the only thing that really matters. You took the job knowing what you were going to have to do and how much you'd be paid to do it. So keep your head down and your nose to the grindstone. Motivation? The economy's shaky, and there are a lot of unemployed people out there who would gladly take your job and could probably do it better. So get busy. Recognition? If your name is spelled correctly on your paycheck, you've been recognized. Advancement. You're lucky to have this job, so stop fantasizing about the one you don't have. When jobs are scarce, or the wage offered is above market rates, workers will grudgingly accept the deal and do what's asked of them for fear of getting kicked to the curb. On the other end of the spectrum, when the economy improves and jobs are plentiful, or when the wage offered is nothing to write home about, old-school employers struggle mightily to attract and retain highly skilled people, and it's nearly impossible for those employers to keep the steak knife masses performing at an optimum level. This may be why many old schoolers see today's workers as soft, spoiled, and lazy. These leaders don't get why a decent wage and fear of job loss aren't enough to motivate workers to step up and do what needs to be done. What's fair is fair. After all, they themselves came up through the old school and paid their dues, and now it's time for these young upstarts to pay theirs. Unhappy employees are unproductive employees. As my friend and best-selling author Dan Pink so aptly puts it, stories are good, data is better. A little data goes a long way, however, so let's hone in on a few representative and very telling statistics related to culture and employee engagement. Gallup's 2013 State of the American Workplace poll surveyed 350,000 employees over a 3-year period, and the results couldn't have been clearer. A vast majority of American workers, 70%, are not engaged in their jobs. Then the kicker. Gallup estimates that these actively disengaged employees cost the U.S. between $450 billion to $550 billion each year in lost productivity. These employees are more likely to steal from their companies, negatively influence their coworkers, miss workdays, and drive customers away. According to an even newer study from Deloitte titled Global Human Capital Trends 2015, Leading in the New World of Work, lack of employee engagement is the top issue currently facing a whopping 87% of HR and business leaders, up from an already startling 79% last year. The February 2015 survey of more than 3,300 HR and business leaders in 106 countries also revealed the following. The number of HR and business leaders who cited engagement as being very important doubled from 26% last year to 50% this year. Some 60% of HR and business leaders surveyed said they do not have an adequate program to measure and improve engagement. Only 12% say they actually have a program in place to define and build a strong culture. A mere 7% of those surveyed rated themselves as excellent at measuring, driving, and improving engagement and retention. While alarming, these statistics aren't news to most executives and managers. Every day, leaders struggle with a multitude of problems that come with a disengaged workforce, and when they seek solutions, they find unsatisfactory answers. Pay them more, offer a dental plan, be more like Google. Numerous studies have shown that better compensation is an ineffective motivator, as is offering a tableau of bennies like 401k, health insurance, and 2-week vacations. As for Google, or the dozen other companies usually cited as exemplars of workplace engagement, the reality is that most businesses aren't flush with Google's cash, nor do they have the luxury of hand-picking employees from among the top applicants in the world. There's an incredible amount of research out there, but let's not get lost in the numbers. Instead, let's just use uncommon common sense. Regardless of which study you point to, there's little question that an overwhelming percentage of people aren't happy at work. They don't like their jobs or the company they work for. They can't envision the way up and out of the hole they're in. Some of them are perpetual job seekers, always on the prowl for the next best thing. And even if they haven't yet started hunting for a new job, they probably could stand to amp up their performance and productivity. One thing's for sure, this disengaged bunch is not your dream workforce, not by a long shot. Engagements don't last forever. Roy and Beth have been dating for a year. One night after a romantic dinner in a posh restaurant, Roy pretends to drop a napkin on the floor. While reaching down to get it, he falls to one knee, pulls a big shiny ring out of his coat pocket, and proposes to Beth. Totally caught off guard and beaming with joy, Beth tearfully accepts. The two are now engaged. 6 months later, Roy and Beth's engagement comes to a screeching halt. What happened? They got married. The engagement ended the moment the marriage began. The moral of this story? Don't sweep people off their feet with a sexy job posting. Romance them throughout the interview process and propose to them with a pie-in-the-sky commitment to a rosy future, only to kiss engagement goodbye the day they began their new jobs. Engagement is a two-way street. It won't work if only one of the parties is engaged. That means you, the employer in this scenario, can't get the engagement you desire without giving engagement in return. And, as will soon become clear, it's in your best interests to be the first to the altar. Many, if not most employees, arrive to the job on day one fully engaged, which is to say they have a vested interest in meeting or even exceeding your expectations. Like you, they're optimistic about the opportunities of the job, and like you, they want to put their best face forward and make a strong first impression to gain your trust and be perceived as a great fit with promising long-term prospects. The challenge facing employers isn't how to engage employees. It's how to keep the fires of passion burning once the honeymoon period is over. It's not the birds and the bees, but the ERs and the EEs. Every employer wants employees who possess the skills needed to get the job done. Employers can either hire people who arrive on day one with those skills, or hire people with the intent to train them. These days, having the most highly skilled workforce isn't necessarily enough to bring about the desired results. In doing research for one of my previous books, Reviving Work Ethic, A Leader's Guide to Ending Entitlement and Restoring Pride in the Emerging Workforce, Greenleaf 2012, I asked more than 1,500 business owners, leaders, and managers across myriad organizations and industries what they truly wanted from their employees. While today's employers want a highly skilled workforce, the findings revealed that what employers prize even more are employees who possess and who consistently demonstrate 7 core attributes: positive attitude, being happy, cheerful, upbeat, optimistic people with a can-do spirit; reliability, be dependable, punctual, no excuse performers; professionalism, dress, groom, and conduct themselves to best represent the company; initiative, always try to learn, improve, and do whatever is necessary to add value; respect, follow company policies and show respect for authority and the chain of command; integrity, be honest, ethical, truthful, and forthright in all situations; gratitude, go above and beyond expectations to deliver outstanding service to all. The 7 attributes we just listed are often referred to as soft skills. These soft skill attributes are the non-negotiable character traits employers demand from every employee, so we'll call this the employer list. In a perfect world, employers would hire from a deep pool of candidates who possess both the hard skills needed for the job and the employer list core values. Unfortunately, however, that particular pool of talent is shrinking and getting more shallow each day, forcing employers to make more and more exceptions. No surprise there. What is surprising is where and how employers compromise, and to what degree. Given a choice between a highly skilled worker with a marginal work ethic and a far less skilled worker with a solid work ethic, the latter will exceed expectations in the job almost every time. The truth is, I've yet to meet the employer who would purposely choose the worker with high skills and a marginal work ethic. We hire friendly and train skills, J.W. Bill Marriott told me when I asked him what made his 4,000-plus hotels a frequent honoree on Fortune magazine's annual list of the 100 best places to work. If you want each and every employee in your organization to have the core values on the employer list, then it's only fair to reverse the question, what does every employee want? More specifically, what do your employees want from you? The employee list, what they want from you. It goes without saying that employees come to the workplace with needs and expectations that are as unique as they are. Nonetheless, if those employees were asked to make a list of 7 things they expect from you, their employer, the list would probably look something like this: compensation, money, perks, benefits, and work-life balance. Alignment, meaningful work at a company with values that mirror their own. Atmosphere, a workplace that provides a safe, upbeat, enjoyable experience. Growth, opportunities to learn new skills and advance in their careers. Acknowledgment, feeling appreciated, rewarded, and sometimes even celebrated. Autonomy, encouragement to think and act independently and make decisions. Communication, being informed about relevant company issues and knowing the company is actively listening to their ideas and wants honest feedback. Let's go one step further and call these 7 things the pillars of workplace culture, pillars as in the 7 side-by-side monuments that reflect the true identity of the company and the workplace community you've worked so hard to build. The acid test to determine the validity of the employee demands on the employee list is quite simply a role reversal. Imagine that you've lost your job and you find yourself looking for work. A friend tells you that you have the perfect skill set for an opening at their company and that they can get you an interview for a position that's nearly identical to the one you just vacated. Sounds too good to be true, but, filled with optimism, you begin to prepare for the interview. Along the way, you discover that the position hits 6 of the pillars, but is deficient on the 7th. Let's say, for example, that the salary is less than half of what you were making before and not enough to sustain your current lifestyle without drastic changes. Or say, the salary is terrific, but you discover this company has been repeatedly fined for pouring toxic chemicals into your town's water supply. Or say that the company pays well and is very ethical, but reviews on Glassdoor.com indicate that an overwhelming number of employees claim they are micromanaged and forced to submit minute-by-minute personal productivity reports to their supervisor every day. Which items on the employee list, which of these pillars, would you be willing to sacrifice? Naturally, if you were desperate for a job, you'd be more willing to compromise here and there. But assuming your skills are in high demand and your options are plentiful, are there any items that you'd scratch off the list? Of course not. The employee list includes those items that every employee, regardless of level or position or company or industry, wants and even expects in a job. Assuming we're in agreement on what both parties are looking for in virtually any kind of employment relationship, we can then view these lists and see where engagement comes into play. Engagement occurs when the basic needs and expectations of both the employer and the employees are met. To put it another way, engagement occurs when an employer meets an employee's minimum requirements for compensation, alignment, atmosphere, growth, acknowledgment, autonomy, and communication. Engagement usually starts on day 1 of employment. Employees accepted the job in the first place under the assumption that their employer will meet whatever they see as their minimum requirements. This engagement continues until such time as employees feel frustrated in their attempts to actually get the things they expected. Said another way, engagement can last for a day, a week, a month, a year, or many years. Consistently meet the employee's minimum requirements, and the odds are good that you'll be consistently rewarded with engagement. Let's talk about broken engagements. We began by talking about a workplace where most workers, the steak knives, fall in between the cracks and are left feeling marginalized and forgotten. Some of these people are engaged. Many of them aren't. This steak knife culture was the norm under the old school regime, but it's rapidly becoming a dinosaur model for employers who, at minimum, desire engagement. Those employers who see engagement as the end-all and be-all probably feel frustrated when their employees don't live up to those 7 core values. Employees also feel let down when their employer doesn't hold up their end of the bargain. In either case, what results is a broken engagement. One or both parties disengage. For example, say an employer feels that an employee overcommits and underdelivers, or perhaps workplace morale wanes when that employee is around. The employer begins to disengage from the employee. Engagement deteriorates into disenfranchisement when either or both parties feel that one or more of the expectations on their list aren't being honored. Likewise, maybe an employee feels the employer doesn't offer as many opportunities for advancement as initially promised. Or perhaps the employee finds out that the company doesn't really practice what it preaches, or that the computers they're issued are so closely monitored that every keystroke they make and all the websites they visit are recorded and scrutinized. What happens then? If your people don't get what they want, they start to disengage. Eventually, they'll resign, or worse yet, maybe they'll stick around. But here's the thing, engagement isn't the ultimate goal, it's merely the starting point. Beyond engagement equals on fire. For many employers, employee engagement is the ultimate goal. Those employers should be careful what they wish for. To be fair, engagement is light years better than disengagement. However, the truth is that the engagement bar is still too low. Why not aim even higher? Are your employees flashing that shiny engagement ring? Are they singing your company's praises from the rooftops? Are they present and doing their jobs? No small thing. Or are they all in? A monumentally big thing. Amazing things happen when either party in an employer-employee relationship begins to exceed the expectations set for them. For example, say an employee's exceptional performance allows her to advance faster than she anticipated, or an employee's idea for adding a new product or service is approved, and upper management recognizes him for this unexpected contribution in front of his peers. Or an entry-level technician takes it upon himself to learn how to repair a crucial piece of machinery that frequently breaks down, costing the company a boatload in downtime and maintenance bills. As a result, his manager gives him the freedom to take on additional projects that interest him. Or that sales rep who, without prompting, comes in on her day off to help the warehouse staff rebuild the conveyor system to get shipments out faster. Her manager gave her some time off the following week to thank her. What often results is more than simple engagement. It's an ongoing cycle of on-fire commitment to the job, to fellow employees, and to the company. When employees are on fire, their energy level increases, sparking a similar increase in productivity, motivation, creativity, and performance. And when the people who work for you are on fire, the thought of looking for other employment isn't likely to cross their minds. Instead, they're going to want to stick around a little longer, and you're going to want to reward, promote, and invest more in them. We might call this The on-fire cycle. You can control only what's within your control. In your perfect world, you would want all of your people on your payroll to be as on fire for your company as you are. That's the dream of every employer, or at least it should be. But the reality is, you can't force people to adopt an on-fire attitude. Likewise, you can't force anyone who works for you or reports to you to be positive, reliable, professional, or honest. Like all successful relationships, an on-fire employer-employee relationship requires commitment, focus, and hard work. And that commitment, focus, and hard work begin with you. Why begin with you? Why not begin with them? Because you can control what happens on your side of the ledger. Naturally, the owner or top executive in an organization has greater control over the 7 pillars than a mid-level manager, and a mid-level manager has greater control over these pillars than, say, a shift supervisor. To whatever degree your authority reaches, begin with you. Make improvements where you can, and make those improvements early and often. If you want to create a legion of on-fire employees, making these improvements isn't negotiable. It's something you absolutely must do. What follows in the chapters ahead is a field guide to help you do just that. Now let's take a moment and talk about the employer-employee relationships that bring real results. In this new economy, the cheese has already moved. Word has spread that a growing number of companies really take care of their people and have forged brand new agreements that are getting better and better. And that's great news for the highly talented and technically skilled. The new deals being struck leave old school cultures in the dust, forcing them to recruit leftovers from the employment marketplace scrap heap. If you want to see these employer-employee deals in action, simply head west to Silicon Valley, home of Facebook, Google, Apple, HP, Netflix, eBay, Adobe, and countless others. These mega-wealthy powerhouses are deeply entrenched in a brutal war with each other for top talent, with no end in sight. This is a war none of them can afford to lose, and each is doing everything they can to make their deal just a little better than the others. The elements of each of these agreements differ, but what they have in common is that they're all rooted in a whole lot more than high salaries, flex schedules, casual Fridays, and free childcare. These aren't short-term perk here, perk there benefit packages intended to coax employees to stay somewhere in the ballpark of engaged for just a little longer. In his recent book, The Alliance, Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, says there's a fundamental disconnect in modern employment where employers ask employees to commit to the company without committing to those employees in return. Neither party trusts the other. Both parties tiptoe around, and mid-level managers are caught, well, in the middle. Hoffman goes on to define the structure of a relationship based on a framework where promises are made that both parties can keep. This emerging employer-employee relationship, as Hoffman sees it, is one where the company invests in employees' market value, and employees, in turn, go all in and invest in the company's success. Neither assumes that the present relationship is going to last 40-some-odd years. Instead, each party is determined to keep the other's best interests at heart until a designated departure date, a specific project has been completed, or some other mutually agreed-upon deadline has occurred. At that point, both parties have a meeting of the minds and decide how to proceed. They may agree to a new timeline. Alternatively, they may mutually decide that this particular employment relationship has run its course, in which case the employee will help to recruit a replacement, and the employer will use his or her influence and network to help the employee plug in somewhere else. By forming a mutually beneficial alliance, rather than simply exchanging money for time, both the employer and the employee can invest more deeply in the relationship and take the risks necessary to pursue and achieve bigger payoffs. This may all sound like a scene from a futuristic movie, but it's happening at LinkedIn and dozens of like-minded companies. And because it's so appealing to the people involved, the alliance concept is spreading quickly through companies and industries worldwide. It doesn't stop there. Whereas the old-school methodology is based on the straightforward exchange of time for money, forward-thinking organizations are adopting smart strategies that achieve the bottom-line results they seek. That's why Netflix no longer requires employees to adhere to a regular schedule and instead permits them to have unlimited time off whenever they feel they need it. Not to be outcultured, Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Airlines, decided that his company would no longer track vacation time at company offices in the U.S. and the U.K. Flexible working has revolutionized how, where, and when we all do our jobs, he wrote. So if working 9 to 5 no longer applies, then why should there be strict annual leave or vacation policies? But wait, when you allow employees to come and go as they please, productivity goes straight to hell, doesn't it? Not according to the Society for Human Resource Management. They report that workers who have been granted the freedom to choose when they work tend to take the same amount of time off, or even less time off, than workers with traditional vacation and sick time. My father is likely rolling over in his grave. As we move forward, we will provide a how-to guide to on-fire employee performance. Before we begin a much bigger discussion about on-fire performance in the workplace, let's highlight some of the topics we'll cover. For starters, there's a chapter devoted to each of the 7 pillars. Compensation. We'll start with this well-documented topic, challenging the conventional wisdom that higher pay equals a more motivated workforce and reinforcing the importance of rewarding actual performance. Alignment. We'll examine the importance of aligning your values and vision with those of your employees and review well-known, real-world examples of do's and don'ts. Atmosphere. What does your organization do to make work feel less like work? We'll pinpoint ways to create environments where employees actually want to work. Growth. Do your employees feel like you understand their career goals? We'll review steps you can take to help them articulate and achieve those goals. Acknowledgment. Employees want to feel appreciated, and they demand recognition for their contribution to your profits. Acknowledgment trumps recognition in today's workplace. Autonomy. Why micromanage your employees and second-guess their every decision? Leaders who give employees freedom and opportunities to pursue their passions can reap the rewards in the form of on-fire employees. Communication. Giving your employees a voice in the direction of the organization helps them see your goals as their own. Transparency is key. Throughout, we'll go straight to the source. Top-tier leaders of the world's best places to work, successful company founders, CEOs, and other inspirational leaders will share their stories, secrets, and practical real-world strategies on how to build not an engaged workforce, but a workforce that's on fire. The founders and CEOs interviewed include J.W. Bill Marriott, CEO of Marriott, Greg Saretsky, CEO of Canada's WestJet, Helmuth Ludwig, CEO of Siemens Industrial, Melissa Reif, President of the Container Store, Joe DePinto, President and CEO of 7-Eleven, and Jostein Solheim, CEO of Ben & Jerry's. But before you get the wrong idea, it's important to note that this book isn't just for executives at large corporations. The guiding principle is that executives and managers at any organization in any industry, from Fortune 500 companies to the mom-and-pop pizza parlor down the street, can learn how to bring out the very best in their employees. For this reason, the book also includes interviews with leaders at lesser-known organizations renowned for their exceptional workplace cultures, such as Wegmans, Build-A-Bear, Firehouse Subs, Vynamic, Western Governors University, and the Nerdery. And we'll go off the traditional grid to hear from inspirational leaders like Frank DeAngelis, principal of Columbine High School, the scene of one of the most horrific tragedies in U.S. history. Each of these stories reinforces ways leaders in any industry can align, motivate, engage, and retain employees after a stock price plunge, a hostile takeover, or something less dramatic, but no less dangerous, like worker discontent and workplace malaise. This go-to reference provides actionable steps you can take right now to improve your culture and build a workforce that achieves exceptional on-fire performance day in and day out. It's meant for C-level execs, corporate and government senior managers, HR professionals, small business owners, franchisees, supervisors, and managers in every industry and at every size company or organization. Maybe you manage a 500-person team in a high-tech space or supervise 5 people at a corner deli. Either way, you'll find new ideas you can implement straight away. There may be limitations to what you can do, but rather than fixating on them, think instead about what you can do. Regardless where you work, ask yourself this: how can I exceed my employees' expectations and get on-fire performance in return? In short, the pillars of an on-fire workforce remain true no matter the organization, industry, or annual profit. It all comes down to culture. Are you trying to motivate people to achieve occasional results? Or are you building a workplace culture that fosters excellence and inspires everyone from senior managers to frontline minimum wage employees to work harder, perform better, and stick around longer? Again, we're focusing on what they want, not on what you want, because giving them what they want is within your control. Over the last couple of decades, the archaic old-school frame of mind has given way to a new deal, where the employees and the employers join forces in a healthy, mutually beneficial relationship. When the employers continually strive to improve the things their employees want or expect in a job, their employees are more committed, give the best they have, perform much better, and are less likely to leave. I'm reminded of a scene in the classic film The 10 Commandments. Moses, played by Charlton Heston, is appalled at the treatment of the enslaved Israelites who labor nonstop on the Pharaoh's great building projects. Moses tries to make the Egyptians understand that treating their workers better will lead to better performance. His suggestions fall on deaf ears until he's finally able to put his theory into practice. Afterward, the Egyptians are amazed at how much more progress a better-fed, better-treated workforce is able to achieve. We also need to understand the customer is no longer number one. When I was a student in a high school business course, my teacher repeatedly made mention of the old-school axioms, "The customer is number one, and the customer is king." He wanted us to know our place in the business food chain. And back in the 70s, 80s, and perhaps even the 90s, those axioms held true. Today, great companies recognize that the employee is number one. When an organization's people are prioritized, appreciated, and looked after with the same great care and concern formerly reserved for the organization's best customers, then and only then will the organization's employees take truly great care of their customers. In other words, great cultures take care of their people, and those people provide the kind of performance, attention to detail, and customer service that grows the organization. The time has arrived to ignite passion in your people and prevent them from burning out. Let's start with the pillar that's most likely their top concern: compensation.